I want you to imagine a mathematical equation.
Okay.
It is incredibly simple, like the kind of thing you might see scrawled on a chalkboard in a kindergarten classroom. Except this equation actively breaks reality as we understand it. Are you ready?
I am bracing myself. Lay it on me.
Here it is. 1 equals -1.
Right, which sounds like, I don't know, a typo in a textbook. Or maybe a Zen riddle.
Yeah, exactly. A riddle that, fundamentally shatters how we perceive the physical universe.
Mhm.
Because if you accept that 1 equals -1, you can just do some basic high school algebra.
Oh, boy. I haven't done algebra in a while, but okay.
Well, you move that -1 over to the other side of the equal sign by adding it, right? What are you left with? 2 equals 0.
Wow. 2 equals 0.
Right. The concept that a tangible something, when you multiply it by 2, equates to absolute nothingness.
That is heavy.
It is. Now, if I told you that this wasn't just like a philosophical thought experiment, but an actual breakthrough concept from a peer-reviewed paper in the journal Science, that would be wild enough on its own, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
But we are taking it a massive step further today. What if someone took that exact mathematical proof, that highly technical quantum physics discovery, and used it as definitive proof for the existence of, and stick with me here, androgynous celestial beings living in a state of eternal blissful orgasm on a space island?
Wow. I mean, you are describing the absolute definition of a paradigm shift there, taking subatomic particle physics and weaponizing it, for lack of a better term, to justify metaphysics, theology, and, well, alien biology.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a truly extraordinary article written back in August of 2017 by an author named Su Feng. And the title of this piece is "The Latest Scientific Study Proves the Existence of Celestial Beings."
It's a great title.
It really grabs you. And our mission for you today is to explore this fascinating, almost, whiplash-inducing intersection of ideas. We're going to look at how Su Feng uses a very real, incredibly grounded quantum physics paper to justify the existence of an eternal spiritual bliss and literal celestial entities.
Just to set the stage for you, the listener, we do need to do a quick tone check here. We are acting as your impartial guides through this material today.
Exactly.
We are not here to endorse the spiritual claims made by the author, nor are we, attempting to peer review the quantum physics of a major scientific journal. Our goal is just to analyze how the author brilliantly and admittedly very controversially synthesizes dense particle physics with Buddhist philosophy.
To make a case for what they call a kingdom of freedom.
Precisely. It's really a masterclass in connecting dots that most people wouldn't even realize are in the same library, let alone on the same page.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can even begin to talk about celestial beings or kingdoms of freedom, we have to ground ourselves in the scientific catalyst that actually sparked the author's entire argument.
Right, the catalyst.
Yeah, we have to go back to July 20th, 2017.
That date is really the bedrock of Su Feng's claim. A team led by a physicist named Zhang Shusheng, who, by the way, happens to be a disciple of the legendary Nobel laureate physicist Yang Zening. They published this highly anticipated paper in Science magazine.
A huge deal in the physics world.
Massive. They were announcing the solution to an 80-year-old mystery in the physics community. They had finally confirmed the existence of something called a chiral Majorana fermion.
Which sounds like, I don't know, a piece of technology you'd use to power a starship or something.
It does sound like sci-fi.
We have to break that down, though, because the name itself holds the key to this whole mystery.
Yeah, let's start with the fermion part, which really just refers to a basic particle of matter, like an electron.
Yeah.
For decades, we have accepted a fundamental rule of the universe. Every fundamental particle has an antiparticle.
An antimatter equivalent.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. If you have an electron, which has a negative charge, there's a positron out there with a positive charge. They are twins. But if a particle ever meets its antiparticle, they annihilate each other in this massive flash of energy. Matter and antimatter just cannot coexist.
Right, they destroy each other on contact. But then a physicist named Ettore Majorana hypothesized, way back in 1937, that there might be a particle out there that acts as its own antiparticle.
Which brings us to the chiral part of the name.
Right, so how does that work?
Well, chirality in physics refers to handedness or directionality. Think about your left hand and your right hand.
Okay, looking at my hands.
They are mirror images of each other, sure, but you cannot stack them perfectly on top of each other facing the same way. They're fundamentally asymmetrical. Now, in quantum mechanics, particles have a property called spin.
Okay,
What Xing Shusheng's team found was a particle that is not only its own antiparticle, but it also moves in a locked-in one-way directional spin, a chiral spin. They found a particle that contains its own mirror image within itself, moving in perfect lockstep.
That is just
I
wow.
know, and they gave it a rather poetic nickname, actually. They called it the angel particle.
The angel particle. I love that. I was trying to wrap my head around how something can be its own opposite without destroying itself. Because my brain just defaults to, like, a battery.
Oh, a battery! How so?
Like, imagine a battery where the positive terminal and the negative terminal are somehow the exact same terminal.
Yeah.
Or think of a coin. You flip a coin, it's either heads or tails. But this angel particle is like a coin that is somehow heads and tails on the exact same side.
What's fascinating here is the conceptual magnitude of an entity that is entirely self-contained, lacking an opposite. It perfectly sets up the author's massive leap into the metaphysical.
Right. So what does this all mean for reality? How does a physics quirk lead us to space entities?
Well, let's look at the math again. If a particle is equal to its own antiparticle, Zhang Shusheng translated that into a formula. The particle is 1, the antiparticle is -1, so 1 equals -1.
There it is.
And as you said earlier, if you move that -1 to the left side by adding it, you prove that 2 equals 0. Doubling this entity leaves you with nothing because it's a completely self-contained loop. It perfectly negates itself while still
It
existing.
just exists on its own terms.
Exactly. It doesn't need an opposite to balance it out in the broader universe because it is already perfectly balanced within itself. It is a closed system. And that specific concept, total perfect internal balance at the subatomic level, is the launch pad for the author.
Yeah, and I have to push back on the sheer audacity of this leap, honestly.
Yeah.
When I was reading the source material, the contrast was just jarring.
So.
Well, we just established this brilliant, peer-reviewed laboratory breakthrough regarding subatomic particles. And Xu reads this paper and effectively concludes, aha, therefore the androgynous space beings I saw are real. I mean, did he build a telescope in his backyard? How do you scale up a microscopic particle to complex alien life forms?
It is wild, I'll give you that. But the text doesn't describe physical space travel, not in the way you or I might picture a rocket launch.
Oh, so no spaceship.
No spaceship. The author claims that while exploring space more as a profound spiritual or psychic journey, they discovered what they call the Celestial Islands continent.
Which is populated by what Swifeng calls celestial beings.
Right.
And rather than just describing their culture or, I don't know, their architecture, Shuofeng goes straight into their biology. This is where the angel particle gets mapped onto living creatures.
This is the core connection.
Yeah. Shuofeng claims that the core defining characteristic of these celestial beings is self-harmony.
Self-harmony. It's a beautiful phrase, honestly, but the author means it in a literal biological sense. Because these beings are self-harmonious, they combine yin and yang into one single body.
Meaning they possess both male and female characteristics.
Exactly. They are completely androgynous. Shuofeng actually compares them directly to a Taiji diagram.
Which I think most of our listeners probably know better as a yin and yang symbol, right? That circle with the swirling light and dark teardrops.
Yes, the Taiji diagram is the perfect visual representation for what the author is describing here. It's a perfect circle containing both the light and the dark, the masculine and the feminine, forever swirling in absolute self-contained balance.
Like the angel particle?
Exactly like the angel particle. There is no conflict between the two halves. They sustain each other.
I understand the poetry of it, I really do, but my brain was still reeling from the transition. Page 1 is about chiral fermions and 80-year laboratory quests. Page 2 is about psychically traveling to a space island to meet androgynous beings.
It's a lot to take in all at once.
It really is. It feels like skipping several vital steps in the scientific method.
Well, your amusement is completely valid. It feels like a massive logical canyon. But if we connect this to the bigger picture and examine the history of human thought, this instinct actually makes perfect sense.
Really? How so?
Humans have this long tradition of looking to the frontiers of hard science, especially quantum mechanics, to validate ancient spiritual beliefs. We call it quantum mysticism.
Oh, like taking incredibly complex math and using it to explain the human soul or consciousness.
Precisely. When wave-particle duality was first discovered, people immediately started using it to validate ancient concepts of consciousness creating reality. Here, Shuofeng is engaging in that exact same tradition.
Ah, I see.
The angel particle is a physical entity that literally contains its own opposite within a single point. So for Shuofeng, This discovery isn't just a win for physics, it is the universe providing a biological blueprint.
Right, like if the fundamental building blocks of reality can be self-harmonious, why couldn't a complex life form evolve to operate on those exact same principles?
That's exactly the argument.
Okay, so what this all means is that Swiffing isn't just using the science paper as a metaphor. The author is treating it as mathematical precedent.
Yes.
But Shui doesn't stop at their biology, which is fascinating. They move from the physical makeup of these celestial beings to the philosophical purpose of their existence. Why does self-harmony actually matter for you and me? What is the point of being a yin-yang space entity?
To answer that, the author introduces Buddhist philosophy. Specifically, they reference the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni. Zwefeng notes that the Buddha's ultimate goal was to lead people to the Elysium world.
Right, and Elysium typically translates to a paradise or a place of perfect uninterrupted happiness.
Yes, but Zwefeng gives Elysium a highly specific, very visceral definition. The author defines it as a state of extreme physical and spiritual happiness. And to ensure the reader grasps the absolute peak intensity of this happiness, Shuofeng explicitly compares it to a biological function we all understand.
Yeah, the text does not mince words here. Swiffing compares the baseline state of Elysium to men and women reaching sexual orgasm, but, and this is the kicker, being suspended in that exact, precise state of climax forever.
It is a shocking metaphor for a spiritual text, absolutely, but mechanically, it serves a distinct purpose for the argument.
It certainly grabs your attention. But mechanically, how does that even work? Because human beings only experience those moments in fleeting temporary flashes. Our nervous systems would short-circuit otherwise.
True. But Shuofeng claims that the Celestial Islands continent is part of a time and space where that peak absolute bliss isn't just possible, it is permanent.
Wow. Permanent climax.
Right, and this brings us to the philosophical crux of the entire article. The author argues that true freedom, a permanent state of extreme happiness, is biologically and spiritually impossible unless you are self-harmonious.
Because of energy exchange, right?
Exactly. The secret lies in the mechanics of energy exchange. If a life form needs to exchange energy with the outside world, it is, by definition, a prisoner to its environment.
So if you have to seek out a partner for intimacy or hunt for food or just find shelter to stay warm,
You are dependent on things outside of your control. You are chained to your environment. And true, eternal bliss cannot exist in a state of dependency because dependency breeds fear, lack, and exhaustion.
here's where it gets really interesting, especially for you listening to this right now. I want you to think about your own existence for a second. Think about your own extreme fragility.
We are very fragile.
Incredibly. Shu Feng draws this sharp, almost cruel contrast between these perfectly self-contained celestial beings and us humans. According to the author, human beings require exactly 64 external factors just to survive.
64 independent external variables that we have absolutely no internal control over.
When you really start to list them out, it highlights how absurdly needy we are.
Yeah,
We aren't just talking about needing oxygen and water. We are a loose federation of dependencies.
that's true.
We need a specific mixture of nitrogen and oxygen in the atmosphere. We need the Earth's magnetic field to deflect solar radiation so our DNA doesn't just unravel. We need a very narrow temperature band. I mean, if the ambient temperature shifts by just a few degrees in either direction, our organs start to shut down.
We rely on gravity to keep our bone density intact.
Yes, we even rely on billions of foreign bacteria in our gut just to digest the food we constantly have to scavenge. If even one of those 64 factors is missing, a human cannot survive or continue.
We are essentially biological machines trapped in a constant state of deficit, desperately consuming our environment just to stave off death for another 24 hours.
It is exhausting. We spend our entire lives managing these 64 factors. We go to work to earn money, to pay for the shelter that manages our temperature dependency, to buy the food that manages our caloric dependency. We are entirely at the mercy of the outside world.
And that's Wefeng's point.
Exactly. So how could we ever possibly achieve true permanent freedom? We are fundamentally designed to be stressed out about where our next breath or our next meal is coming from.
Which is why the celestial beings represent the ultimate evolutionary end goal for the author. Because they are self-harmonious, because they contain both the yin and the yang within a single closed loop, they do not need to exchange energy with the outside world.
They just exist.
Right. They don't need a partner to achieve bliss. They don't need to consume plants or animals to generate energy. They are a self-sustaining system. They don't rely on a single one of the 64 factors. They simply exist, suspended in a state of permanent, vibrating joy.
They are the biological manifestation of 2 equals 0.
Exact.
They are the angel particle, scaled up to the size of a conscious being.
This raises an important question, though, about the author's underlying motivation, because understanding that connection reveals the emotional core of why Shuofeng wrote this article in the first place. Throughout the text, you can sense this deep, palpable feeling of vindication.
Oh, absolutely. The author actually flat out admits it. They were tired of being mocked.
Yes. Shuofeng writes that previously, when they tried to explain their spiritual visions of the celestial islands and this self-harmony phenomenon of these beings, people just laughed at them. Critics thought it was completely impossible.
Right, because an entity that doesn't exchange energy with its environment violates the laws of physics. It sounded like pure fantasy.
But then, out of nowhere, Zhang Shusheng publishes his 80-year breakthrough in Science magazine.
The ultimate vindication.
Suddenly, Shuofeng has peer-reviewed mathematical proof from one of the most prestigious scientific journals on the planet. The paper proves that a self-harmonious entity can, and does, exist in the physical universe.
Which is wild.
And in a dramatic translation twist in the source text, this angel particle is also referred to as the God particle. Shuofeng concludes that this is the final proof. If a subatomic particle doesn't need to exchange energy with an antiparticle because it already contains its own opposite, well, the scientific precedent is set.
So the laws of quantum physics allow for a completely self-sustaining entity, and therefore, according to Shuofeng, the celestial beings must be real.
That is the ultimate conclusion, yes.
It is such a wild, fascinating ride of an argument. I mean, we started with an 80-year-old physics mystery about chiral particles spinning in a laboratory. Then we explored the mind-bending math of a reality where 1 equals -1. We took a psychic leap to the celestial islands continent to meet androgynous space beings living in a perpetual state of climax.
As one does.
Naturally. And we ended up doing a deep, slightly terrifying meditation on the 64 environmental factors that keep us fragile, dependent human beings alive day to day.
It is a remarkable piece of intellectual synthesis. Regardless of whether you buy into the theology of the celestial islands or the author's psychic space travels, you really have to admire the architectural structure of the argument.
You really do.
Shuofeng takes a fundamental discovery about the subatomic fabric of reality and uses it to completely redefine what ultimate freedom looks like.
And that's what I really want you, the listener, to take away from this deep dive. I want you to reflect on your own dependencies. Think about those 64 factors.
It's sobering.
It is. Think about how much time, anxiety, and energy you spend every single day just maintaining your equilibrium with the outside world. And ask yourself, how do you define freedom in your everyday life? Do you define it as having enough resources to comfortably manage your biological dependencies?
Or do you define it the way Shuofeng does, as absolute, unbroken self-containment?
Exactly.
And that is exactly where I want to leave you today, with one final, lingering question to ponder on your own. Shuofeng defines the ultimate kingdom of freedom as absolute self-containment. To be a celestial being means you need absolutely nothing from the outside world to exist.
You're your own yin and your own yang.
Right. You are perfectly full, perfectly balanced, needing no energy exchange, no external validation, no intimacy with others, and no external sustenance.
It's a completely closed, self-sustaining loop.
But if you need absolutely nothing, well, and you need no one else to sustain you, does that kingdom of freedom eventually just become a kingdom of absolute isolation?
Oh, why?
If you never have to reach out to the world around you because you already have everything you need inside yourself, are you truly free, or are you simply alone? Is this ultimate, eternal bliss just another word for total cosmic loneliness?
That's a haunting thought. Because remember how this all started. The math was shattered. 1 equals -1. And when you move it all over, you are left with 0. Nothing outside yourself. Just a perfect, solitary circle in the dark. Keep thinking about that. We will see you on the next deep dive.